Hello, and welcome to another edition of What is Jessica Reading? I am Jessica. I am a library clerk here at the Macedon Public Library, also a self-proclaimed bibliophile. Um, and we're here to talk about some books in the young adult genre, some books I've read recently and that I can recommend to all of you. So since it is October, I do have my spider earrings going today, and we are going to talk about a few books that are quite appropriate for the Halloween season, some more so than others, but I'm going to start with the most recent book I just finished. And the first time I've ever read it is Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes. This is sort of a classic fantasy horror. It's not horror in the sense that there is a lot of graphic descriptions of violence or anything like that. It's more that kind of unsettling notions, that sort of ideas that sort of creep in and really just settle into your mind and make you feel really uncomfortable. So I would definitely recommend this book. This was, I wouldn't say it was fun to read, but I enjoyed reading it. It was really creepy at times. It was really it was a little unsettling at times, but it was still enjoyable to read because it is told from the perspective of these two 14-year-old boys, Jim and Will, when this sinister carnival comes to their town in the middle of the night, and how they discover that this carnival is up to no good. And what was interesting about reading this is that it's enjoyable from a young adult age, in that you're getting the perspective of these two, like, just a little over teenage boys and their desire to maybe be a little older. And you're also getting this perspective of the people in the town that are grown, that maybe long to be a little younger. So I can enjoy reading it, as not a teenager, because you could sort of identify with both sides. You could Ray Bradbury has that really good way of tapping into those sort of underlying human emotions and desires, and um, sometimes dark thoughts. So this was really, really, really enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend it. It seemed like a great time to read it. It actually does take place about a week before Halloween in October. So I definitely recommend Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. It's pretty quick read. Here in the paperback version that we have, it was 293 pages. So it went by pretty fast, and we do have this one here at the Macedon Library. The next thing that I finished recently was a little less Octobery, but was another classic called The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. The Outsiders, you might have heard of the movie that came out, I think sometime around the early 80s, had a lot of up and coming movie talents in it. Tom Cruise, Emilio Estevez, Patrick Swayze, Ralph Macchio. So it was a pretty well known movie. The Outsiders is considered the first official YA novel. I mean, I don't think I don't know if it was, but it's considered to be the first one. So this was very, again, another really quick read. It's only 180 pages. The author says that she began writing this story when she was 16 or 14. I can't remember. When she was a teenager, basically. It's set in, I believe, the ninth. I'm not entirely sure when it is set. Could be set pretty much any time between maybe the 60s, 50s, 60s era. But it's about two rival groups of young adults. The greasers, who are the kids from kind of the wrong side of the tracks, and the socias, which are the sort of well-to-do richer kids, and how the socias like to mess with the greasers, and how there are often these sort of altercations, these fights. It's all taken from the perspective of the 14-year-old protagonist, Ponyboy, as he details how the way life is, but then also how things get out of hand, and how sort of useless that kind of violence can be, and what an effect it can have, especially on these young people, and even spiraling out into the rest of their lives. So it was a very thought-provoking read. It was a very quick read, but I'm definitely glad that I read it. I read it, I think, in a day. So I listened to it partly on audiobook, and partly reading the physical copy. So it was very quick. Very glad that I read it. I would definitely recommend it. I think it was worth the time. The next thing that I read was, I kind of just picked this up off the shelf one day, and I'd seen it before, but I didn't really know what I was in for, and it turned out to be really fun. So this is a little book called Cloaked in Red by Vivian Van Velde. She's a well-known YA author. This particular book, again, pretty small, very quick read. Only 127 pages. But this was actually a lot of fun. I wasn't sure I didn't know what to expect. Wasn't really expecting anything. I thought it was one complete story that was a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, but it's actually 8 separate versions of possibilities of Little Red Riding Hood, and it was just so much fun. Some of them were actually laugh out loud funny. There's actually one from the wolf's perspective, which is not a talking wolf. It's like a canine wolf, and the usual antics of the story are happening around him, and you're getting his perspective on it, including when he gets to the grandmother's cottage. This is one of those parts that just made me laugh. Is it says, the wolf sniffed beneath the door just to be sure this was a human cottage. The scent was undeniable. No pigs, except in bacon form. The wolf thought that being in bacon form was a very sensible way for pigs to behave. So it was definitely enjoyable. It was a lot of fun to read. It was, again, really quick. I don't know what it was with, I just was reading really short books this month, but I would definitely recommend this one for just some good fun. It's not a very heavy read. You can read, a couple stories at a time, set it down, come back. But it was definitely a fun collection of short stories. Vivian Van Velde is really good at that sort of tongue-in-cheek writing at times. And she's actually a relatively local author. I'm not sure if she's from Rochester exactly, but she is from around Western New York. So that's a lot of fun. She's always at, I guess, the Children's Book Festival that takes place in Rochester. So if you want to support a local author, and you also want to grab a fun little book that isn't going to take up much of your time, you can look for Cloaked in Red by Vivian Van Velde. Now, the next book I actually didn't read recently. I read this one about, I think, a year and a half ago. And I listened to it in audiobook form because I was working at the time. I wasn't working at the library. I was working somewhere where I was doing a job that you could also lent itself well towards listening to audiobooks at the same time. So, but this book, I'm recommending more because looking into going forward into the colder weather, this is a book called Shiver by Maggie. Oh, I'm going to mangle her name. Stiefvater. It's Stiefvater. So you can look for her in the teen section under STI. And this book is called Shiver. It is a werewolf love story book that takes place between a human girl and a boy who is a werewolf. And as the weather gets cold, this take on werewolves is that as the weather gets colder, and as we start to get into the season where it starts to snow, as their body temperature drops, these werewolves are forced to change into wolf form. And again, it's a like a canine wolf. It's not really like a supernatural human wolf. They become like canine wolves. Um, and eventually, after enough years pass, they remain that way. So they stay in wolf form and they can't turn back into being humans. Um, so this is a book that takes place during basically this boy's last, what he believes to be his last year of being human. And he finds a girl, and this girl, and that he's been known or been from afar for a few years, and they get to know each other and fall in love. And so it was surprisingly touching, and surprisingly tragic, watching this sort of inevitable story of being separated. But there's also another layer going on of a sort of mystery to um, why she isn't a werewolf, because she was bitten when she was young and did not turn. So there's another side story going on there with some other characters. And so for a YA novel, it was surprisingly engaging, surprisingly heartfelt, and able to tug on your emotions. And since we are moving into some colder weather in upstate New York, we'll have snow before we know it, I'm sure. So if you're looking for something to kind of get ready for that time of year, something that kind of inspires that cozy, um, sitting down and wanting to be warm and comfortable and read a good book, I recommend Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. Hopefully I am saying her name correctly. And on that note, actually, to go along with this book, there's one more book that I'm going to recommend. And again, this is one that I actually read about a year ago. This is a book that is not in our YA section. This is actually in our nonfiction section, and it is called The Anatomy of Curiosity. And it is actually written by three authors that are all fairly well-known YA authors. You've got Maggie again, you've got Tessa Gratton, and Brianna Yavanoff. And this book I found to be just so interesting and so engaging, because what it is it's actually, each one of these authors wrote a short story. And within the short story, they added notes about why they wrote things the way that they did, or why they had a character do a particular thing, or how they highlighted characterization in that time. Or so basically, this is a book that helps people understand about writing by demonstrating their actual writing styles, how they go about writing, that insider look into how they create a story. And it was just so interesting. And it was just like nothing I'd ever read before. And each one of the short stories I also found very engaging. So this book I would also definitely recommend if you were interested in any of these authors, or if you're interested just in writing in general. I would definitely recommend looking at The Anatomy of Curiosity. And it is under ANA for anatomy. So, but it is in our nonfiction section. So you got to look for it there. So those are my books for October. Some that kind of cover the Halloween theme, the Halloween feel to this time of year. Some looking forward into the colder weather going forward, and some just to satiate your curiosity. But if you have any questions, you can always come into the library, ask any one of us librarians for book recommendations. We will be more than happy to help you. But I hope that some of these book recommendations helped you to find a new book to read today, or maybe just a new author. I hope you all have a happy, healthy, and safe Halloween, and have a great rest of your day.